this video, we're going to go over how to find standard deviation. So standard deviation, we typically create these charts where we have our data point, which is represented by X, our mean, which is represented by X with a line over it. We then find our data point minus our mean. And then we take whatever our data point minus the mean is and we square it. We're going to use these steps in order to figure out our standard deviation, plus a little bit more. So the first thing we need is we need some data points. So we have our data points. Again, in this problem, it does not matter if our data points are labeled from least to greatest. That is more of a mode or a median thing. So we go ahead and we list out our data points. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to find our mean. Remember, to find our mean, we're going to add up all of these data points, and then we're going to divide by the number of data points. So we would add up all of these and divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So our mean value, if we add them all up and divide by 7, is equal to 17.429. Again, there's a few more additional decimal points. I rounded the last number. I put in my mean as the same for each one of these. So my next step is to go ahead and find my data point minus my mean. So my data point minus my mean here for each one of these. So 15 minus 17.42 is negative 2.429. Repeating that by taking my data point minus my mean, I can find the differences for each one. My next step is to go ahead and square this difference. Keep in mind that when I'm squaring, I'm going to get rid of any of the negative signs. And when I square, all I'm doing is taking the number that is inside of those parentheses and multiplying it by itself. So negative 2.429 squared is 5.9. Repeating that, I get these values. Again, remember, all I'm doing is taking my difference and squaring it. My next step is going to be to add all of these values together. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to divide by the number of points that there are. Again, there are 7 points here. So when I add all these values up, I get about 104 and divide by 7. So I get 14.82. My last step is going to be to take the square root of this value. So the square root of 14.82 is equal to 3.85. So this is my standard deviation. Remember how my standard deviations come in handy is I start at my mean and I either add or subtract my standard deviation by 1. So if I have my mean, again, remember my mean, 17.42, and I subtract my standard deviation of 3.85, or I have my mean and add 3.85. This will give me one standard deviation to the left and to the right, which will then tell me where about 75% of my data exists. Remember, the more data points you have, the closer you'll be to that 75%. So this can be a little bit tedious, especially as we get more and more data points. So another tool that you could use is either Sheets or Excel to help you find the standard deviation a little bit quicker. So here you can see I have the same points set up, and I've already gone ahead and listed out my data points. I can use Excel in order to figure out what my average is. I've put a few quick shortcuts over here: average meaning mean, sum meaning add, and SQRT meaning square root. So to find the average or mean, all we have to do is do equal, and then average has to be in all caps. We have a parenthesis, and then we're going to select all of the cells or all of the data points that we have. I'm going to do an end parenthesis and then hit the enter button, and you'll see that it will automatically tabulate or calculate my average value here. So in my mean boxes, I can just go ahead and put in 17.429, And I can just copy and paste that into every single cell. To find the difference, I'm going to press the equal sign. The equal sign in Sheets or Excel always means that you're going to do a calculation. And I'm going to click on the first cell that I want it to put in. So this means that it'll take my 15. And remember, I want to subtract out my mean. So I have, for the same data point, my 0.1, the actual point, minus the mean that I have. And I'm going to go ahead and press enter. You can see that I already calculated my difference right away. If I click on the cell where I already did the configuration, you'll see in the bottom left corner there's that little box. If I hover over that little box, my arrow changes. And I can click and I can drag and it will repeat that same calculation for each data point. So I don't have to worry about repeating them by themselves. My next step is to find the square of the difference. So again, I want to press equals in order to tell my program this is going to be a calculation. I'm going to click on the cell that I want to square. And then if I hold down the shift button while hitting the 6, you'll get that little up caret and then 2 in order to say that I'm going to square it. And you can see it already gives you the calculation right there. Again, we're doing equal. We're clicking on the cell that we want to square. We're holding down our shift button and pressing the 6 at the same time to get that little up caret, and then doing 2 because we're going to square it. If we hit enter, we already have the square difference. And then I'm going to duplicate that just like I did with my difference over here. So I'm going to click on the cell, go to the bottom right corner, click and drag so that it will repeat for all of them. Now remember, I need to find the sum of all of these values. You can do this in any cell. I'm going to hit equal to let my program know that I'm going to do a calculation. I'm going to use sum this time, all capitals, parenthesis, click and drag to select all of my numbers, then do end parenthesis and enter. Now remember, it's not just the sum, but it is the sum divided by the number. So to get that equal, again for my calculation, I'm going to click on my sum and then I'm going to divide by the number of times there is, which is 7. I have 7 data points. So my last step is to find my square root of this number. In order to do that, again, equal for calculation. You can see that I need SQRT to symbolize square root. So SQRT. I do my parentheses. I select. I do my end parentheses. And there we go. I have my standard deviation, which was the same standard deviation that I had before. So again, same steps. It doesn't matter how you want to do it. If you want to, you can always use Sheets for a larger data set, and you can always take a screenshot of what you have in Sheets if you're ever asked to show your work. But it will work the same. Again, the steps are to write out all of your points, find your mean, then in your chart, write out your mean, find the difference between your data point and the mean, take the square of your difference, add all of your square differences together to get a sum, divide that sum by the number of data points you have, and then find the square root of that number in order to get your standard deviation.